We're going to watch this segment. Be prepared, folks, because we'll have things to say. Oh, God, excuse me.
I'd say of Krystal, Kyle, and Friends. Not only is it Krystal, Kyle, and Friends, it's also
First off, Krystal does not look happy. She's like, yeah, I guess I'm kind of here.
sort of like a dual thing
With her
going on.
husband.
We got Brianna Joy Gray in the house, and this will be on her channel as well, the Bad Faith podcast.
Little crossover.
It is filtering it
episode.
out.
Little
Good,
crossover episode.
Love that for us.
Definitely looking forward to it. So we're going to discuss Cornel West's campaign and everything around that. And I just want everybody in the audience to know, because I don't know if we've said this publicly before, that like he's been invited on multiple times and he just hasn't come on yet. And you know, this goes all the way back to when he launched.
Yeah.
We invited him on. He hasn't come on yet. You know, will he eventually? I don't know. You know, it's up to him. Ball's in his court.
Yeah,
but
and we had him on before.
we had him on before. Yeah, before he announced his campaign. I mean, we're going back to when the People's Party thing launched.
Right.
We were
Oh, yeah,
we
with
invited
Jimmy
him
Dore.
on all the way back then too, and just haven't heard back or anything. But I just don't want people to think we're debating Cornel West, but like Krystal and Kyle are refusing to talk to Cornel West. We'd love to talk to Cornel West. We want to have him.
That's
you
fair.
know, we'd love to have him on at any point in time to discuss anything. And
Oh yeah, Alex, Crystal Ball and Kyle Klinsky, they got married. Just funny though, because he lives in New York, and I guess she still lives in Virginia, so I don't know how that's working, but they're fucking married.
everything. So we're going to discuss his campaign a little bit here. And so I want to lay out what my position is, and then Bree, I'll turn it over to you, and you can respond to it. And Krystal, you can jump in at some point and say what your position
We'll go
is.
through all the things.
So we'll go.
Which, not gonna lie, like early on when I was watching Kyle Klinsky, I'm like, oh my god, these two have good chemistry. I could see them dating. Now this is like 2018, 2019, and now they're married.
through all the things.
A lot of people said the same thing.
Here's my first of all, in the Democratic primary, because I'm a registered Democrat in New York, I will be voting for Marianne Williamson. Very happy and proud to say that. I'm the chief Marianne Williamson bro out there. I'm leading the charge. Now, in New York, I'm in a safe state. So would I vote?
I'm also in a safe state in California, so for the primary, I'm kind of tempted to do the same thing, even though it's not going to make a fucking difference. I'm predicting now. Call me out now. Excuse me. Hear me now. Call me out later. Marianne Williamson's not going to get far.
Vote for Cornel West in New York? Yes, because I have a 95% agreement with him on policy, and I think it would be nice to get the Green Party in a position where if they become more viable because we get ranked choice voting or something, it'd be nice to grow their popularity a little bit. And when we get ranked choice voting, I think they kind of automatically become a lot more viable. So I'd like to help out in that process. But if I'm in a swing state and it's Biden versus Trump, I'm at the point now where I don't even think it's a tough call. I would definitely vote for Biden.
Go Biden.
Because either in that situation, even if other people are running, either the Democrat or the Republican is going to win.
Oh yeah, not far,
And
but
in my
also
estimation,
just
Biden has
for two
definitely
people that are
passed what I
married,
would
that's
describe
a
as my bare
drive.
minimum purity
Hey,
test.
what's up, Chase?
And I think if it's him or Trump, or even him or DeSantis or anybody, he just blows them out of the water. And so I think I'd happily vote for Biden in that instance. Your response?
So I similarly was voting for Jill Stein in New York in 2016.
I did the same.
That's true. yeah.
And I also happen to believe that strategically it makes the most sense to apply pressure to the Democratic Party by voting for not Biden in a primary. Marianne Williamson is obviously the most progressive candidate in the
We're talking about a general. We're talking about a general election. Okay.
primary, and then vote for Cornel West in the general. And I know there are a lot of people in my audience who are frustrated by that plan because they think that it takes something away from Cornel West's run, or it affirms the Democratic Party in some way to vote for Marianne Williamson running as a Democrat. I don't feel that way. I feel it's a little hypocritical to have that position, given that we all just enthusiastically voted for Bernie twice in the primary the last two rounds. You can make a distinction saying that Bernie was an independent, and he always identified as an independent, and Marianne Williamson doesn't have that kind of cloak of distance from the Democratic Party. You can say what you want. I don't see those things as mutually exclusive in the least. So that is also my plan.
about?
I differ from you only insofar as that I would say it's a more difficult choice in a swing state to decide what you're going to do. But I frankly respect people who feel comfortable. It has not been something that I have to
Hold on. She knows primaries and general elections are different, right? Like if you're in a swing state and it's between Biden and Trump, you should go Biden, right? She's not even acknowledging what Kyle was saying, but whatever.
contend with, but I respect people who feel comfortable voting third party even in swing states. The reason is this, and it goes back to that early bad faith viral Noam Chomsky interview, in which I asked him about a month before the 2020 race. Look, I said, I take your point. Let's say Trump is an existential threat. Let's say that he's a unique threat among all Republican candidates. My concern is that every year, because we all vote for blue no matter who, because most Democrats vote blue no matter who, or most left-leaning people do, the message that gets sent out is that Democrats don't have a bar. You can go as low as you want, as close to the Democratic Party as you, Republican Party as you want, and there's a ratchet to the right effect. And Republicans know that they can keep being more and more extreme. And so,
Cap, sorry, like that's just Cap. That's a ridiculous sentiment. It being like, well, we just have to vote blue no matter who, so the Democrats aren't going to change. Even though we saw in 2020 with Bernie winning a bunch of primaries, and it's kind of forced the messaging of Joe Biden to move a little bit further to the left because, well, Bernie was getting a bunch of the popular votes until, you know, the Democrats coalesced and all that other shit. But even the Democrats are starting to understand that blue no matter who isn't going to be good enough, and that's why there's a coalition within the Democratic to get more progressives in the Democratic Party to move other Democrats a little bit further to the left. At least if they don't ideologically move to the left, a lot of the policy is going to capitulate at least a little bit more. Like, I hate to say it, as much as I'm not a fan of Joe Biden, I would say that he's way better than Obama, for sure. Especially because he's actually trying to do stuff to help, at least a little bit, help the populace. I know he could go further on student loan debt and all that other shit, but I mean, he's been doing a bunch of other stuff. And as much as he's not good with unions, he proved that within the train workers union. There's also been legislation that passed that actually bolstered up unionization. So giving Biden credit where it's due. So just being able to say that, yeah, if people just keep voting blue no matter who, Democrats are just going to be exactly the same and the Republicans are going to go further right. That's just a fucking ridiculous sentiment. I'm sorry. I do not agree with that.
So I want you to explain to me what you predict to be the stopping point at which we're no longer saying this new Republican is the worst that has ever happened. This new Republican is the worst that has ever happened. Tell me you're not going to be saying the same thing about Ron DeSantis or Vivek Ramaswamy or whatever other person comes down the pipe. And he was unable, in my subjective view, to respond credibly to that claim. So if somebody could tell me strategically what the stopping point is going to be of making this argument of the lesser of two evils, I would be open to the idea that, okay, this is the last one. Donald Trump, fine. He
fucking... The weed whacker's just getting closer. God damn it. Oh, yeah, he'd for sure be worse than Trump. Vivek is a used car salesman who would fuck over more people than he could probably count.
He tried to steal the election. Fine. That is a new line that he has crossed. But absent...
I was telling people about this earlier, is that DeSantis isn't going to get that far. Quote me now, call me out later, but... DeSantis, if he keeps going on this woke platform, a lot of Republican voters don't give a shit about wokeism as much as they care about stuff like pro-life bullshit. When Mitt Romney ran and when McCain ran, those were two Republicans that were less bad than Bush. Yeah. Oh, his campaign is dead. Yeah, for sure. Let's see what else Brianna Joy Gray has to say, because this is not a good start.
An acknowledgement that we are creating our own destiny by lowering the bar in these ways. I'm not comfortable coming out and criticizing anybody who no longer wants to be complicit in that kind of a system that's enabling.
I don't understand how it lowers the bar. Like, I can understand that, oh, hold on. Before we have done it, I am at least slightly more likable than Ron DeSantis. Yes! Got more than 12 likes in 3 hours because DeSantis only got 12 likes in fucking 3 hours with this post. Yes! Good friend of the show, Epic Prawn, who beat the fuck out of Ron DeSantis. Let's go. Let's fucking go. Friends, if you haven't already, go follow Epic Prawn, based as fuck streamer. VTuber who does video games, politics, social stuff, other stuff, video stuff, based as fuck. Good friend of the show. Way to beat out DeSantis. I forgot what Brianna Joy Gray was saying. Lowering the standards. That's not true because I don't know if she remembers this, but the largest grassroots movement with what was his name? Bernie Sanders. You're a better Republican candidate than Meatball Ron. Way better candidate than Meatball Ron. Meatball Ron. Bullshit candidate. Bullshit candidate. Your sci-fi arc. Oh, tell me about. Well, tell me why after the political segment. Sounds good. It sounds good.
People, the Democratic Party,
sounds good.
To not have a primary, treat Marianne Williamson as badly as they've treated her, treat Bernie Sanders as badly as they treated him, and openly come out and say they don't have to hold a free, fair election. The DNC argued that in court. You know?
So let me explain a little bit of my position. I think that'll help respond to some of what you said there. And I'm also curious to dig in a little bit more to your analysis of how the Biden administration has actually been in reality. So last election in 2020, I did live in a swing state. I lived in Virginia, still live in Virginia, registered in Virginia. And it did not feel good to vote for Joe Biden. But I decided to vote for Joe Biden, which is something I said publicly at the time. But I said something very similar to you, which is like, listen, this was not easy for me. If you, wherever you live, swing state, not swing state, etc., you do whatever you analyze is the right thing to do.
I hope she's about to say that was the best move.
And the reason that I voted for him primarily at that time, even though I thought he had an atrocious record in the Senate, even though, complicit.
Sorry, before we continue, Kyle did the same thing in 2020 and being like, well, I live in a safe state. Yeah, but we were going over Brianna Joy Gray. I'm not a fan of hers. Kyle did the same thing in 2020 and being like, you do what you want to do regardless if you want to. I don't know about the swing state part, but he basically said, vote how you want to vote, which I think is very irresponsible.
The Iraq War, complicit
as a public
trade
figure.
Deals, complicit, like terrible things on crime, all that stuff, right? The primary reason I voted for him was because of the National Labor Relations Board. And because labor politics and building out union power in this country, to me, is one of the most important goals. And something that I think we all share and leftists generally believe.
Well, not one of the most important, but she's right. Now, in retrospect,
not only do I feel good about that vote,
Joe Biden has done good shit with unions. Perfect? Fuck no. Especially with the railway unions. Like, he shit the bed on that. But we've had stronger unions over the years than we've had in the most recent decades.
Surprised me. Now, I've got all kinds of issues, right? On the National Labor Relations Board, though, specifically, they just issued a ruling which could be a complete game changer for unions. And just to explain to people a little bit, basically, in the past, bosses could union bust with impunity, no accountability. Now, the process going forward is completely changed. If bosses are caught union busting, then that's it. There's no more election. It's canceled. They have to recognize the union and start bargaining with them. That's the biggest shift in labor relations we've had in our lifetime. So
he's the most labor union, like pro-labor we've had.
It's likely to. I'm a Marianne supporter as well, but we can all see the most likely outcome is it's going to be Trump versus Biden. Not only would I say that protecting the Biden National Labor Relations Board isn't important enough for me to vote for Joe Biden, but it is important enough that I would actively encourage, but I'm not going to shame them for whatever they decide to do, but I would actively encourage people who are in a swing state to vote for Joe Biden if for no...
Yeah, I have to... Sorry, before we continue. Shaming people on how they vote, not the way to go about it. If you're calling people fucking stupid for... This is one of my criticisms of Vosh and Destiny during 2020 when a lot of people were Bernie or bust. Granted, was Bernie or bust irresponsible? Yeah, it is irresponsible. But the way that they handled it, calling people like fucking idiots and all that shit, and berating people who were, I guess for lack of a better phrase, principled, but very much like, I can't morally vote for Joe Biden and berating people. It's a fucking dumb thing. That's a dumb thing to do. I think making fun of voting habits is contextual. What do you mean? Most pro-labor president in a long time, yeah. It just depends, because overall, I mean, you've had a lot of people that were calling people fucking idiots for not wanting to vote for Joe Biden. In fact, for me, I was very much anti-Joe Biden until Trump, he said something that was very authoritarian that kind of opened my eyes and saying like, man, I have to vote for Joe Biden. Miso, don't. either way, the way that Vosh and Destiny handled it, I found was very irresponsible in being able to berate people and how they vote. I didn't think it moved people anywhere.
No other reason than to protect that board.
So I think that's a perfectly defensible position. And I had this conversation on my podcast in the last episode, and there were people who would characterize that position as
make fun of busters, three-party shills, and non-voters who complain about politics, especially. Okay, non-voters, that one I can make fun of. Busters, I guess it does depend on the context, but berating people for being Bernie or bust, like, you can understand the sentiment and why they vote the way they do in third party. Like, if you're going to berate them, good luck trying to convert them and voting for Joe Biden, because I guarantee it's not going to be as effective as people want it to be. There's something more sympathetic about that. As for non-voters, yeah, I can make fun of that.
I mean, you've heard the thing. You've been on the internet. Being too credulous about Biden, or being too comfortable in one's own position in life and not needing enough change and being happy with the status quo. People will say things like that. I think actually that if your priority, if you
it's not to move people over for what it's worth. Yeah, I don't understand then. What's your goal?
Believe the path to meaningful change is going to primarily come through a kind of, I don't say this dismissively, but a kind of labor incrementalism, meaning there are meaningful labor gains that happen, but are not the type of which would radically transform the system the way that some people want to happen in a shorter term. And the way that some people might argue Bernie Sanders represented his movement as the goal of being, then that's a defensible position. But I have to hold space for the reality that there are people for whom, even as significant as those labor gains are, it's simply insufficient. And what they see when they look at the trajectory of the last 50, 60 years of Democratic Party politics, when they read Listen Liberal and see the longer game the Democratic Party making a concerted choice to back away from labor in a way that has gone on for decades and isn't necessarily turning around as a consequence of Joe Biden having some good NLRB appointments.
So
what? That makes zero sense. Nothing good is happening with labor stuff except when Joe Biden is making things slowly turn around. What the fuck are you talking about?
Let me actually,
and then I want to jump in.
Easiest to explain, but I should try my best. Feel free to ask me to describe it live tomorrow. Yeah, for sure. I'm just confused on what you mean, just because I can understand to some extent being able to make fun of people, but I guess if we're talking to like friends or family members, stuff like that, like this is a different context than what we're talking about. This is a different context, but I mean, making fun of them, I just don't think is an efficient move to go with, because people are automatically going to go get defensive as possible when they're being made fun of for their choices. So it's something I don't agree with. But again, the non-voter thing, yeah, I'll fucking make fun of people for that. Which is not going to convince them to vote, ironic enough. So I understand how that backfires when I do it. But there's a sympathetic point, in my opinion, in trying to reach Bernie or busters or third-party voters. But again, granted, people try to convince me to vote for Biden, but it was actually Donald Trump that convinced me to vote for Biden. In regards to my friends making fun of them, it's my go-to, but isn't my go-to that may happen. That's me and my friends, though. Yeah, that's totally fair. That's fair. I make fun of my friends who don't vote more than the ones that vote third. Yeah. Because I know initially when Bernie lost in the primaries, I wanted to go Howie Hawkins, and I'm just like, what the fuck is that going to do, though? Like, that's not going to do anything. He's not even going to get past 5% of the popular vote. And even if he did, what's that going to do? Third parties aren't viable in the United States. And it's either have someone that you could potentially move a little bit further to the left, which we've seen with Joe Biden recently. Granted, is he perfect? Dude, fuck no. Like, I'm still fuck Joe Biden. And having someone you can move to the left, or have another person that will knock things back for decades. And to say that Joe Biden hasn't done anything or hasn't been influenced by voting patterns or recent shit that happened is complete bullshit. I make fun of my friends sometimes. Yeah, that's fair. Because I know Prawn and I will goof and gaff. And I'll make fun of other people too. I guess it's a problem with me too. I'm just very sympathetic to the Bernie or Busters or the third party voters. I'm very sympathetic, and I try to convince them without berating them. But there are some people where you're just like, oh, dude, you and I are aligned. You and I align, and you're too far gone. For instance. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Who's that? Who's this on the screen? Hey, who's that? Who's that? Is that Brianna Joy Gray? Yeah, it's her.
Been to it.
So number one, I don't think that in massively increasing union density, I actually don't see that as incremental change.
Probably
I mean, if you look at the chart of the decline in the middle class and the decline of union density, you'd be hard pressed to find a more significant...
The whole point of that rant was I think Vosh and Destiny did it very irresponsibly. They could have handled that much better, but they're not as much. But at the time they were big debate bros and just trying to make people look as stupid as possible, and they would do the ad hominem calling people fucking idiots. I'm like, where the fuck is this going to go? In regards to strangers more than friends, I have learned that much of the time you are not going to be changing a person's mind directly. However, if their position looks like nonsense, others who hold it are likely to reconsider, and since they weren't attacked directly, they'll have less dissonance over it. Yeah. So it's more of a I'm convincing the audience, not you sort of thing. Yeah. Exactly. And I don't think Vosh and Destiny were doing well in trying to convince the audience. I think they did a pretty bad job with it. I know you're talking more broadly, more general, but it's just like, yeah, this could have been handled way better.
Significant factor.
I made these arguments as well.
But the other piece is, I feel like those same people who are right about the Democratic Party, they were right about the analysis in Listen Liberal, right about the fact that you had, this free trade, bipartisan consensus, and in large part a union bust.
He was like,
that you had, this.
Sorry. How do you go back frames? Sir? I want to see that again.
Right about the analysis in Listen Liberal, right about the fact that you had, this free trade, bipartisan consensus, and in large part a union.
I'm not going to openly disagree with my wife.
Consensus. Also, don't acknowledge that there actually has been a notable shift in the Biden administration. Now, my big issue with the Biden administration, I mean, there's a million of them, right? On foreign policy, I've got problems. But my biggest issue economically with the Biden administration.
I think he wanted to try out for NSYNC just about 25 years too late.
Is the way they've allowed the pandemic relief, the short-term pandemic relief programs to fall away and leave a lot of ordinary Americans in a more precarious financial.
Or was that Backstreet Boys that I just did? Whoops.
Position now than they were at the beginning of the administration, and that's not nothing.
That was Backstreet Boys.
But when I look at the long term, when I look at the fact that, listen, with the Inflation Reduction Act, with the CHIPS Act, with infrastructure investment, you're talking about industrial policy in a way that would have been completely unheard of in the Clinton-Obama era. When you look at not just the NLRB, which I said is like the core for me, but also his antitrust appointments and the fact they're really trying to reverse decades of neoliberal attack on any sort of trust busting, I feel like none of those improvements that have made Biden on that front way better than Obama, way better than Clinton, I just feel like there's no willingness to acknowledge any of that whatsoever.
I don't think.
Oh, comma and period. Gotcha. I didn't know that. Cool. Thank you. Even though you answered the question earlier, but I forgot I asked that question. So I think that's where the misunderstanding came from. I'm not going to be an asshole to my... I'm not going to be an asshole to my friend for being a Bernie or Buster, but I might make fun of a different Buster in hopes that my friend gets why the strategy is bad. Gotcha.
The issue is acknowledging it. It's how much it matters to you, how weighty that is to you, and how much you see those kind of call them meaningful improvements as really core to the nature of the project that you're on. And I think that what some people are frustrated by...
Is she actually a socialist? And being able to say, like, stuff with the NLRB is actually going to help push people forward. And she's like, it depends how important it is to you. What the...
Is that this went from feeling like, in both left media and left politics, a bigger revolutionary project that was going to the core of our capitalist system and wanting to radically change the way that human lives are valued, what we consider to be the nature of our social safety net, what we believe to be the nature of what we consider to be human rights. And they wanted to join a movement that validated what many of us felt intrinsically, emotionally for most of our lives, that something in the milk very much wasn't clean. And Bernie came along and
yeah, I understand this point of view. I really understand this point of view and willing to some like radical change. I know she's speaking of an anecdote. She's talking about her past and all that stuff, so I'll let her continue. But it's like, I totally get where she's coming from. However, just I hate using the word realistic it is. It's more gradual than it is radical.
Articulated that it was legitimate for us to be asking for something more. Mm-hmm. And so at this point, it does feel as though there has been a kind of a bait and switch. It's not that what you're describing isn't true or legitimate. And I said this on my podcast.
Sorry, just the it's so weird. I know what she's saying with the bait and switch, but it's just like, you thought it was your husband, but it was me.
If your priorities are what you have kind of articulated your priorities as being, I think it's a perfectly legitimate argument. But I have to hold space for the fact that for many people, it simply is inadequate.
Wait, can I respond?
Yeah,
let me jump in here. So my issue is that many people on the left are, I would say, dishonestly refusing to acknowledge any good things that were done. We could all on the left list, like, here's the 57 things we hate that Biden did. But when something good happens, I'm the only one talking about it, and then I get accused of being a DNC shill. Now, I'm not like, look, I'm not blind. I think in order to be intellectually honest, you have to look at, here's the good things that happen, here's the bad thing that happened, I'm going to give them all to you, and then you could judge how much you value each and which one you weigh more and how that factors into your, like, voting analysis. But I was like the poster boy.
I have to say, though, like, the way that Kyle talks about the issues, the good and bad, he tends to come off shilly when things are, like, overly good, being like, oh, you could come up to your own conclusion, but this is good. Which is not necessarily a bad thing now that I think about it.
Way back in the day, or people viewed me this way, as like, he's the purity tester. He's like the main purity tester guy. And I didn't vote for Biden in 2020 because I didn't think he would pass my purity test. Now, at the time, people could go back and watch the video. My purity test was super fucking lenient.
That was very,
it was like, if I'm convinced you're going to do like 2 or 3 of the things that I value highly, then I would vote for you. Because I know it's basically down to just the Democrat and the Republican, no matter how much we want to wish the Green Party or Libertarians want to wish the Libertarian Party into existence. And so when I look at the record, again, I could list all the bad things, but you just mentioned the NLRB raising overtime pay, or you mentioned the thing where, you know, they automatically recognize the union if the bosses try to bust it up. There's also the overtime pay rule where now it's not $33,000, it's about $55,000 a year, where now you get overtime pay. That's a huge, huge change.
Thank God.
Student loan debt reduction, and even Biden coming back after the Supreme Court tried to slap it down, and he said, no, I'm going to try to do it through the Higher Education Act now. There's little things we could go after him. Oh, the interest rate. Yes, that's bad. I agree with you on that. But we got to recognize that that is, all things considered, a step in the right direction. Pulling out of Afghanistan, he actually had the balls to do it, even when the media was shitting on him relentlessly. And I didn't see anybody on the left coming into his defense at that point in time.
A lot of people have.
I was like,
see, okay, we watched it earlier. I know some of you were just coming into chat a little bit late. I don't understand Gremlow's critique of this and being like, yeah, the bare minimum argument is bullshit. It's not bullshit. Being able to acknowledge when someone actually does a good thing, even if it's above the bare minimum, being able to market it. Because when you always go with like, the bare minimum isn't good enough, it tends to influence people in different decisions that aren't ideal, in the sense of like, well, maybe Joe Biden's doing above the bare minimum, but it's not good enough, so I'm going to go the other direction, or I'm going to go third party, or I'm going to go Bernie or bust, or shit like that. I don't agree with Gremlow in his assessment on this.
The only fucking one. It was like me and Matt Iglesias.
I definitely defended him.
Okay, well, then it's like 3 people. I didn't, and all these, oh, I'm so anti-war. He pulls out of Afghanistan, and it gets messy, because that's what happens when you pull out of wars. And all of a sudden, oh my God, you know, it's the end of the world.
A good moment for the left. I saw a lot of consensus. Good on you, because we almost resented and kind of were enjoying the extent to which he was getting, you know, dogpiled by the mainstream media, and we were the only ones defending him. So I would quibble with that a little bit. But
I didn't see much defending him. I really didn't.
Kyle, what people are responding to, if I can offer this, is not the idea that you are accurately describing advancements, good things that Joe Biden is doing. I think you could also say Obama did some good things.
No, Biden is way better than Obama, not even close.
That's not the point I'm making.
That's not the point,
It's
Kyle.
not that one is better than the other.
Not to
you
defend,
can also
defend
sit
her.
here and say Obama did good things. Now, the way you bristled at me saying that, I could say, oh, why won't you just acknowledge that Obama did good things? The same way that you're saying that leftists won't acknowledge, they bristle when you acknowledge that Biden did good things. And it's because we have different standards and we're making different kinds of comparisons.
But that's not my issue, because they're not even acknowledging the good things, is my point. I have a list of 47 things here, and I've heard nobody talk about any of them.
But let me get to the core of this point. The reason that people are frustrated with that kind of analysis is because it's been used for so long by liberals to justify why people shouldn't be asking for more. I'm not saying that that's...
Has it, though? How accurate is that? Like, because I just know that the Democrats are just really bad at advertising themselves when they actually do good things and not making it at the forefront for potential voters. I don't know how accurate this assessment is, actually.
That's what you're doing. But if you bring up something like student debt, when the consensus of all of the student debt experts that I've talked to on my podcast, people from the Debt Collective, the Asher Taylors of the world, the legal experts I've brought on, is that there was a path toward doing this, to canceling all student debt that would not have been stymied by the Supreme Court. The same authority that Donald Trump used to enact the student debt moratorium, which has been ongoing until beginning of this month for the last 3 years, was the same authority that he could have canceled all student debt with a stroke of a pen. He chose not to do that because he decided to means test the program. He circulated those documents. I got one in my inbox last August, I believe it was, to see if you qualify for student debt. It was a very easy form. But when he did that, that started the clock for people to be able to challenge it in court, which what 6 states did.
She's actually right
Two of them
about
were
this.
successful, and now here we are today. Not only did he decline to do the unstoppable mechanism to actually cancel all student debt, he additionally chose to use a legal authority, which when many legal experts said was the most vulnerable one. So you're now saying,
No.
he could have used the Higher Education Act.
He did. He did. He invoked it.
He could have done that in the first instance.
But he didn't, and now he tried it again through the Higher Education Act. The idea that it's like it's a conspiracy, he doesn't want to actually cancel it. No, he appealed the case like 4 or 5 times.
Kyle,
and then at the end of it, when the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that, he said, fuck you, I can. And he did the Higher Education Act. That's exactly what we wanted him to do. Then he does it, and people go, oh, that's not good enough. And it's like, that's ridiculous.
There, Kyle, what we wanted him to do.
God, I can't believe I'm saying this. I have to agree with Brianna Joy Gray on this and being like, no, the whole point is that Biden could have done this way earlier. There was a more efficacious route. And people had warned him, hey, don't go this route because there's going to be a bunch of legal hurdles. Go this route. And Biden's like, well, I'm going to do that, and then I'll consider the other thing. And now he's doing the other thing. But the whole point of what Brianna's saying is it was a little bit too late. It could have been done way earlier. And I think this is actually to her point.
It was first and foremost, just cancel the student debt.
I expected him to do nothing on student debt. This is the point I'm trying to get across to you, is that I expected nothing from Biden, and he did way more than I expected. So let's be honest about that.
It's not about your expectations. We have different expectations.
Of course I'm going to talk about it through my expectations. I'm me.
But I want to pivot this conversation a little bit, because what we really have is a tactical disagreement. We could quibble about student loan debt. We could quibble about all kinds of aspects of the Biden administration. All of us would like him to do more. There's no doubt about that. But hold on a second. Our political aims are ultimately very similar.
I'm so frustrated. It's like, Doug, just let Krystal talk. I mean, I understand Kyle got super frustrated. Yeah, that was a little bit overt. Kyle didn't handle that well, for sure.
But I do think the student loan debt example is instructive, because it shows what has been effective in terms of securing real gains versus what has been ineffective. Jill Stein running in 2016, I don't think she was a spoiler, but the Democratic Party thinks she was a spoiler. They put that out to the public. So in the theory of change, where a third party would force all of this revolutionary change on the Democratic Party, that should have worked. But instead, it served to allow the Democratic Party to basically demonize and dismiss third party efforts, and then they prop up Joe Biden. So that definitely didn't work. However, the fact that Joe Biden had to be on a primary debate stage versus Bernie and Marianne and a whole lot of Elizabeth Warren, a whole lot of other people who were pushing him on student loan debt cancellation, forced him into a position of doing something when he 100%.
This is what I was saying earlier. Yeah, he definitely had forces that had to push him a little bit to the left and doing, even if it's not good enough, doing something about these issues. Especially with Bernie Sanders. Only had the largest grassroots movement in American history. No big fucking deal.
percent would have done nothing otherwise. And we can see that now because, the fact that they've basically blocked any sort of real democratic process within the Democratic primary has made it possible for him to literally promise nothing for this next term thus far. So you can see how the third-party effort was not successful in bringing about whatever revolutionary change people want to see. And the process that Bernie engaged in and that Marianne Williamson is engaging in now was far more effective in actually delivering results. And that's what I'm focused on.
They will cave to social pressures, Sorry, before we continue with whatever the fuck Brianna Joy Gray is about to say, subscribe. Continuing on.
I think are both fundamentally dramatically overestimating and overstating and giving way too much credit in that you can make your labor point, the student debt point, absolutely not. Joe Biden promised and coerced people to the polls by saying he was going to cancel at least $10,000 of everybody's student loan debt and moreover cancel all student loan debt for graduates of HB.
Probably because unlike Republicans, people actually vote for them instead of empty plots of land with handful of easily misled folks. Yep.
HBCUs. And he went down to Georgia, a state that he not only needed to win for the presidency, but needed to win for the Senate, and where there are 3 of the major HBCUs in the United States of America, made that promise, and people knocked doors and turned people out to the polls on the basis of that promise, which he immediately stopped talking about the second he got elected and reneged upon. He also knew the authority that he had to cancel all student debt. And I know because all of these student debt advocates have been talking about how they were directly liaising with his office and communicating these points, and they chose to ignore them and do a plan that he knew could be obstructed. You can say it's not a conspiracy theory, that's conspiratorial thinking, but it's either a conspiracy or he's an idiot. Those are the options. And I'm not especially comfortable in validating either of those things. Now, you were saying that you were looking through the prism of your own perspective.
No, I was saying I expected nothing from him, like we all expected nothing from him.
Absolutely not. The people that he promised.
I expected nothing from him.
Wait a minute.
I expected nothing of Joe Biden. He was the guy who brought us NAFTA. He's the guy who brought us the Iraq War. He's the guy who wrote the Patriot.
Okay, Kyle. Calm down, bro.
Act, who wrote the crime bill. I expected nothing of him.
When a presidential candidate makes a promise to people and lies to them in order to get them to go to the polls, I believe it's my job as a member of independent media to make it clear so that people don't fall for those kinds of mistakes going forward. People, if Biden wants to run as I'm a milquetoast incrementalist who's just better than Trump, he can feel free to do that all day and night, and then he would have lived up to the expectations that he set for himself in the context of a primary campaign.
He did run as a milquetoast.
He promised to cancel all student debt for every graduate of an HBCU and $10,000 to $20,000 of student debt for people who earn less than $125,000 a year. Now, that might not matter to you, and I've defended.
That first one, is that true? Because I know anyone who makes under $125,000 can have $10,000 to $20,000 forgiven on student loan debt. Like that was for sure on his campaign. But the first part, I'm actually not sure about that.
I defend you guys against claims that
probably true.
You don't care about this stuff because you're out of touch and it doesn't affect you in material. I think that some of those claims get really silly and overly personalized. But Biden made a choice to tell 44 million Americans who have student debt that he was not only going to not fulfill his promise to them, but that in the middle of the debt ceiling argument of a couple of months ago, the one thing that he was going to bargain away to get the debt ceiling passed was ending the student loan moratorium. So now it's not me. I'm not the one in control of whoever votes. He has to make the case to those 44 million Americans who's he's starting their student debt up. That's right, months before an election.
Is the plan stronger or weaker than what you expected? Because it's way stronger than what I expected.
Hold on.
Way weaker than what I expected.
But I expected nothing from him on student debt. Nothing.
The real question.
Okay, so I have. Goddamn, why am I defending Brianna Joy Gray? Like, it doesn't matter, Kyle, if you expected nothing. It's just Brianna Joy Gray, I guess, did have expectations for Joe Biden, which is not true. She didn't actually have any expectations for Joe Biden because she never had any intention of being able to vote for him because he thought he wasn't going to do anything. But apparently. He underwhelmed Brianna Joy Gray. I forgot the whole point. Kyle being like, I expected nothing, while Brianna's just like, well, I did expect more. I don't know why you have to say anything, Kyle.
Though is we all want all of the debt to be canceled.
Duh. Yeah, of course.
What is the most likely path to get us there?
It's not Joe Biden, obviously.
Hold on. But I don't see how Cornel West getting 5% of the vote and
Yeah, that's the thing. That too, Alex. I had zero expectations, but I was going to demand things of him too. Like, I expected nothing from Joe Biden, but that was the whole point. Like, in being able to try to slowly reform, I guess, the Democratic Party, like from the inside, is being able to demand more as the party goes a little bit more left wing. For what it's worth, going more left wing, but we've had more progressives in like Congress and shit like that, who have been able to be like, yeah, we have to put a little bit more pressure on the people who are actually going out and being like, hey, you person I'm going to vote for, maybe, you need to do this thing, like above the bare minimum. And Joe Biden being like, all right, well, I guess I'll go above the bare minimum, Jack.
Unintentionally helping to reelect Trump. That doesn't get us there at all.
Let's get into that. Let's get into that. So for
whereas
two things,
if you have a primary contender actually able face-to-face to pressure him, we have seen the way that can potentially work.
Those things aren't mutually exclusive. So why is that an argument against Cornel West?
It doesn't have to be exclusive, but do you think that the project of defeating Trump is worthwhile at all? Because I would turn back on you. You asked the question, like, where's the bottom of the lesser evil question? Like, where does that end? I would turn it back on you and
okay, yeah, hold on.
Of the lesser evil question, like, where does that end? I would turn it back on you and say, where does it become not just a lesser evil, but like, actually, this person is significantly better? And I would say that Biden, for my...
Okay, sorry. I was trying to go back to where Brianna Joy Gray looked visibly annoyed with Krystal Ball's statement / question and being like, yeah, clearly this person's better than this person. And she's just like, ugh. It's just like, well, it's true, though. Like, she's not taking the question seriously. She's not taking it in good faith. I understand Brianna Joy Gray gets a lot of shit, but a lot of it is because she argues in bad faith.
My disappointments with him for all of the things that I talk about plenty, including disappointments on student loan debt, including on the pandemic relief that I talked about, including on the railway, all these things, right? Ukraine. At what point, though, do you acknowledge that this person is a lot better than Donald Trump? And so when you're in this binary choice where let's not pretend like Cornel West is going to be president of the United States, it is worth making the choice in that situation to reelect Joe Biden and get the NLRB and get the antitrust stuff and get what is at hand to be gotten in this moment and live to fight another day.
So for one,
and add pressure. Don't forget that part, Krystal Ball. Add more pressure to the fucking guy that's voted in. If he's not doing well enough, well, fuck. There's going to be a lot more pressure from hopefully other Democratic candidates.
Krystal, somebody might say, and people did make this exact argument against Bernie Sanders. Fine, he's on the stage, but I'm not going to vote for him. I'm not going to weaken the person who's ultimately obviously going to be the president of the United States. Why not vote for Biden in the primaries? Why? And you're wrinkling your brow because it's a ridiculous argument. I completely agree. I don't see
what?
The argument for Marianne and against Cornel West. They have nothing to do with each other. You can vote for Marianne in a primary. You can be happy that she's on the debate stage, which obviously they aren't allowing, which is material to this argument, I've got to say. Some people you're saying, what is the Green Party going to do? The Democratic Party has demonstrated that it won't host a free and fair and open primary.
Wait, I get that.
What is the Green Party going to do on a federal level? What is the Green Party going to do? Now, I'm going to say that if you want to have more representation within the Green Party, vote on a local level for someone who's affiliated with the Green Party, or even on a state level, like maybe even for governorship, shit like that. But this is a really good frame too. I should here, I'm gonna print screen and save that. Maybe save this for an emote. What was I saying? Fuck, I forgot. Oh yeah, what are they gonna do on a federal level? Because they're not viable within a two-party system. Until we get rid of first past the post, like, they're not going to be viable at all. And I would debatably say maybe Marianne Williamson isn't viable, but if she could get on a debate stage, she might be able to influence some more of the policy from Joe Biden, or if more people represent her. Now, she's right, though. They're not going to have a debate stage for Marianne Williamson. They're not going to entertain it at all. But what would the Green Party do? Because she's just like, well, the Democrats haven't done enough. But the Green Party literally can do nothing. At least with the Democrats, it's moving in some sort of direction positively, as opposed to when we had Mr. Scary Orange Man, who made things undoubtedly worse in the United States.
But how does Cornel West getting 5% of the vote and helping unintentionally to reelect Trump, how does that move us towards our goals?
So 2 things. One, you said this in the now viral clip, that just framing Cornel West as the spoiler, looking at those polls. In those polls that you referenced, Biden is losing in both of them, with or without Cornel West in the race.
Now, Cornel West makes it worse.
Cornel West makes it incrementally worse.
I just want to clarify one thing. I'm not blaming people or saying like it's their fault for Trump getting reelected or whatever. But I am saying we would like it if the way the Democratic Party responded to Cornel West would be to cancel all the student loan. But we know that's not reality. So we know that what ought to happen and the reality of what will happen are two very different things.
Let's get to the second point.
Yeah.
You framed the 2016 votes for Jill Stein and the reaction of the Democratic Party subsequently as evidence that a concerted movement effort to withhold one's votes has been proven ineffective. It is obviously the case, Krystal, that there was not a concerted effort in 2016 or any kind of structural movement to withhold one's vote for Hillary Clinton in favor of Jill Stein. It was just a bunch of us angry Bernie bros. A very small number, by the way, because we all know sitting here that more Bernie Sanders voters in 2016 bent the knee and voted for Hillary Clinton than Hillary Clinton voters in 2008 bent the knee and voted for Barack Obama. We all know these statistics. We've been saying them back at neoliberals for the last 5, 6, whatever years. That being said, there was no argument to control the media narrative and present an opportunity for actual leverage and change. So there wasn't like a group, there was no spokesperson, there was no politician, there was no left media that was saying, here, I have a organized movement, an organized group of people who are willing to actually change their mind and vote for the Democratic nominee in exchange for various concessions. That didn't exist. And I'm, by the way, not advocating for it. I know that some of my friends like Nathan Robinson have said that Cornel West should do exactly that, say that he'd be willing to drop out in exchange for various concessions. I think that's better than nothing. I think that's more than, frankly, I love Marianne and I hope she's successful, but that's more than Marianne is likely to get out of this. However, that is not even my plan, my perspective.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I am saying, though, is that knowing that the Democratic Party is fundamentally not willing to be fair. They're willing to rig the election. They're willing to change the order of the states. They are willing to completely block Marianne out of the media. It feels rich to say that running within the Democratic Party is manifestly and demonstrably more effective in actually changing the outcomes
because of the structural barriers
than Cornel West.
Yeah, okay.
Well, at very least, you're keeping very...
Thank God Kyle said it, because I was about to be like, yo, the Green Party is not fucking viable. So what do? You have to infiltrate the party from the inside. Have people who are more progressive. Have them do their own campaign trail, whether it's within the Senate or Congress, or even on like a local level shit. Maybe not local level. We'll talk federally. Let's talk federally. You get people who are more progressive or left-leaning into these areas, so that way the Democratic Party actually changes, so that way we can implement some of this legislation and actually implement some of these changes, these structural changes, make them actually reality. How are you going to do that on a third-party basis with Cornel West? Simple answer, you're not going to be able to.
Very dismissive, Kyle, about this 5% matching funds.
First of all, I've said like 2 words in the past 10 minutes, okay? So I'm not being dismissive about anything. I haven't gotten a fucking word in.
Okay. What is it that you're chomping at the bit
to say, It's the structural barriers against running as a third party. As rigged as it is by the DNC against outsider Democrats, which it definitely is, it's even more rigged against third parties, which is why they always get like 3% of the vote.
Which is literally...
Oh, man, I have to say, as much as Kyle is kind of blowing Brianna Joy Gray out of the water, he doesn't look that good. Krystal Ball's looking really good. I'm not talking about her appearance. I'm saying like the way that she's conducting herself looks a lot better. Just because there's definite tension between Brianna Joy Gray and Kyle Kulinski. Like, they're butting heads. One is getting aggressive, the other one's getting defensive.
And Bernie got 43% of the vote.
Which is literally why people feel it is a structural advantage to get someone like Cornel West to 5% of the vote so they can get federal matching funds. To me, as a voter,
40% as a Democrat.
For me, as a voter in New York, I'm not interested in shoring up the Democratic Party.
No, that's him getting his ideas out. It's shoring up Cornel West. That's the whole point.
I am not a Democrat.
I understand that. That's very clear. But I'm saying that would shore up Cornel West.
And the people who also don't want to vote for Joe Biden under any circumstances are not Democrats. And fundamentally, you can make your argument. I think it's a perfectly legitimate argument to me.
Hey, some people who are Democrats don't want to vote for Joe Biden. So this is a true statement.
to Democrats. I think that Democrats might think that Joe Biden is a manifestly better Democrat than other Democrats.
But it's not about whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. It's about what are your political goals. And I think that 100%. We share a lot of the same political goals.
There's a big one that we don't share.
But hold on. So I still don't understand. Just lay out for me.
Yeah.
What in the ideal scenario happens, and how does that constitute any sort of revolutionary change or help to further the goals that we largely share?
Yeah. I think, for one, getting federal matching funds for third-party candidates, since I believe third parties are going to be a much better vehicle to actual meaningful change in this country than the Democratic Party, is
wait, hold on.
Vehicle to federal matching funds for third-party candidates.
What are federal matching funds going to do? Because you need a really specific amount within the popular vote, but even then, third parties within the next election are only going to get about $10 million, which is nothing compared to what Democrats and Republicans get. What is that going to do?
I believe third parties are going to be a much better
vehicle.
And
it used to be 12 million in the 90s. Now it's 10 million.
In this country than the Democratic Party is infinitely more significant a goal.
But third parties haven't gotten a
What's
single
that
electoral
do?
vote in
and it's
50
like round
years,
and round and round and round.
No, but it's true because I mean, look at Ross Perot had all the money.
It's going in a circle because what you're saying isn't viable. You can discredit them all you want, but what you're saying is just it's not viable at all.
The world. It didn't matter.
He didn't get one electoral vote.
He didn't get one electoral vote.
Do you agree that ranked choice voting needs to come first? That's the important question. Do you agree that if we get ranked choice voting, then yes, overnight third parties become more viable.
But
until we get them, they're not viable.
I think that Cornel West running in a general election where he has been doing this. He's been talking about ranked choice voting in interviews, but continuing to talk about how the onus is on the Democratic Party to prevent the spoiler effect. He is in a position now running in a general election every time he goes on TV to say, if you're upset at me at being a spoiler, you need to look at the Democratic Party, who across the country for the last decades has been purposefully undermining any ballot measures that effectively put into effect ranked choice voting in Maine, in North Carolina, the way they attacked Matthew Hoh. I am not the enemy, they are. And that's the burden shifting, the narrative burden shifting I think the left should be engaged in right now. To the extent that you think that Cornel West can ruin Biden's chances, isn't it Biden's responsibility to find those votes, not among disaffected third partiers who don't owe him anything anyway, but the tens of thousands and millions of disaffected Democrats who aren't going to vote for him? We've all talked about this together. In Wisconsin, in 2016, there were 88,000 registered black voters who voted in 2012 who declined to vote in 2016. That's like 2 or 3 times the margin by which Hillary Clinton lost in that state alone.
Well, she's not wrong in saying it's up to Biden to get those votes, being able to appeal to those voters. Yeah, for sure. This is true. Yeah, I'll agree with that.
And yet we're sitting here talking about whether or not Cornel West is going to pull some third-party voters away from the Democratic Party.
It's the difference between what I would love to happen and the reality that we have experienced.
So say that Joe Biden doesn't attract enough voters to actually go out and go to the polls and be able to vote for him, and you get more people attracted to Cornel West, who's not going to get any electoral votes, what's that going to do? I think a simple answer is it's going to put the Democrats at a very big disadvantage. You're going to put the better candidate compared to the alternative at a great disadvantage in swing states.
Experience now. I mean, we tried it before in 2016. It did not help.
What did we try in 2016?
The third party effort. Jill Stein was not
One of the problems with 2016 is also people did not want to go out and vote just because Hillary was such a fucking atrocious candidate, which, yeah, fuck Hillary.
Spoiler. It is not those voters' fault who voted for you, like you guys that voted for Jill Stein.
But she got blamed anyway.
But she got blamed.
And then the left was further marginalized as a result of it.
So I don't see the connection. If I did, I would love to vote for Cornel West. It would feel way better to vote for Cornel West. I share his politics almost 100%. But
Bread_ Theory is raiding with a party of 4.
Hey, Bread Theory, what's going on, my friends? How did your stream go? What did you end up doing? Friends, if you're new to the channel here and you haven't heard of Bread Theory, well, make yourself acquainted because give them a follow, based as fuck, fellow leftist, fucking cool. We got cool people in chat today, and go follow Bread Theory, okay?
But I don't see the connection between voting for Cornel West and achieving any of the aims. And I see a much more direct connection between protecting the Biden National Labor Relations Board and allowing this little budding, exciting, amazing, potentially transformational labor movement to actually grow. Whereas if Trump gets reelected, which is, listen, it's the fact, based on how the Democratic Party is going to respond to Cornel West's election bid, it is more likely that Donald Trump gets elected with Cornel West in the race. And that, to me, is a massive loss because we know what his record is. We know what his National Labor Relations Board was. We know who his labor secretaries were and how they were engaged in all this union busting. And so I see a much more direct connection between that moving the ball in our direction than, Cornel West getting 5%. And either his candidacy not really mattering at all, or being used once again to, smear the left and marginalize the left and say these are just the people that are interested in getting Trump elected.
So to that second point, I'm just going to be honest. Not only do I not care about arguments that the left is going to be smeared, I think it's silly because no matter what we do, the left is going to get smeared. Bernie won Nevada, and it was, oh my God, we're going to decapitate people in Central Park.
How many people were saying that?
It is, I think, deeply unrealistic to expect that there's ever going to be a left movement that genuinely challenges power in this country that's not going to be smeared. And if you are choosing your political strategy on the basis of what's going to get you a pat on the head from MSNBC, and I know this, I don't mean to mischaracterize you, but that is naive.
Listen, that's fine, and I agree with you. Left is going to be smeared, but the question is, what is actually going to move the ball forward?
I'm confused by why you keep asking that.
Because I don't see...
Because policy is all that matters.
Why don't you understand? She's saying that going the third party route in a general election for Cornel West isn't going to get the ball rolling. We saw this with Trump in 2016 to 2020. Things went backward. We did all this work in pushing a boulder up, and only for it to go backward like fucking Sisyphus. Is Thing in prison yet? What?
I don't see how Cornel West getting 5% and helping to reelect Trump ends up with things going in a better direction.
Like that, Krystal? He gets 5%, and then the Green Party, a third party effort, it gets stronger and more well-funded and more able to...
It gets money for the next election, but it still pales in comparison. It still pales in comparison to what the money that Democrats and Republicans get. Like, I get trying to get that extra money to make third parties a little bit more viable, but 10 million is still not enough. It used to be 12 million back in the 90s. Now it's only 10 million. To go with inflation, like, it's really way more worthless than it was in the 90s. I understand the concerted effort to want to make third parties more viable, but even just helping them out with a little bit more money in the next election isn't going to be enough to make them viable. I know I've been using the word viable a lot, but like, this is just... never mind.
Compete in future elections.
Until we have ranked choice voting, there is no even 1% viability for them. Can you admit that? Can you acknowledge that it's until we get ranked choice voting, no third party has any chance in hell. You agree with that, right?
Who do you think has been doing most of the ranked choice? Who do you think?
Ranked choice voting has gone. Libertarian Party has done the most to have ranked choice voting concerted efforts.
I'm not going to answer it. It's a simple question.
I'm going to answer it in my own time, in my own words, Kyle, respectfully.
It's a simple one. The ranked choice voting thing, if we get ranked choice voting...
I go around, I do a lot of podcasts, and I don't know what's going on right now. It might be the phase of the moon. We had the double moon last month. But I'm getting a little frustrated with feeling shouted down and disrespected in every single space that I go into. I got to say, I promise I'm going to answer your question, Kyle.
It's just the thing that you're saying is... It's ridiculous.
Kyle, sit tight. I got it coming for you.
I'll sit tight.
Who do you think has been doing the bulk and the best funded ranked choice voting advocacy in terms of getting on ballots and getting it passed in the United States of America?
Third party voters.
The Libertarian Party.
Yeah.
Because unlike the Green Party, I'm no fan of the Libertarian Party, but for obvious reasons, they were enormously better funded than the Green Party. And they, as a consequence, have been able to make much greater gains and actually getting ranked choice voting passed around the country. What I'm saying is that there's a tangible material benefit to getting more money for a Green Party, whatever third party happens to be, but right now all we have is the Green Party for obvious reasons. Getting them more money to do the work across the country to advance third parties, ranked choice voting rather, is exactly the goal that you're articulating. So yes, I do see a direct connection between your goal, your stated goal of getting ranked choice voting and voting for the Green Party. You know who's not going to
giving them money isn't necessarily going to give them power on a federal level. Like, and also, like, I keep saying this, I've repeated this multiple times, even if they get like a 5% of the popularity vote to get 10 million for the next election, it pales in comparison. Money doesn't necessarily equal power. It helps, but it doesn't make them like a legitimate thing in the grander scheme of a general election on federal level. If you want to make them more powerful, you want to make them more effective, vote for third parties on a local or state level. Federally, it doesn't make sense. Hasn't pushed for ranked choice voting. They asked Jill Stein about it, and she basically just wants to beat Democrats, not grow the party. Yeah, sounds about right. During this first past the post system, like getting enough funding for a third party, and like there's a lot of third parties. Don't know if a lot of you are aware. There's a lot of third parties. To actually make them stand up to, it won't happen, but to make them stand up to Democrats or Republicans, that would take literal decades. You have to change the structure. You have to change the system. Just trying to make a third party more viable isn't going to be effective.
Fight for ranked choice voting? The Democratic Party.
Or significantly less effective,
Here's my point. There's not even a 1% chance or a 0.1% chance of Cornel West winning unless or until we get ranked choice voting. So I have to be honest, I feel like it's self-disenfranchisement to really like put all your effort into third parties
DSA was
before
growing.
we get ranked choice, putting the cart before the horse, in my opinion. That's my point. And on the issue of Democrats versus Republicans, we know either the Democrat or the Republican is going to win. And clearly we have a disagreement in terms of how good of a job Joe Biden is doing. Because like I said, I expect...
If you want to make a structural change the major party from the inside. Trying to make third parties more viable, it's going to take forever compared to changing an already prominent party from the inside. Just some of the shit Brianna Joy Gray is saying is just... I hate using the word realistic. It's unrealistic.
Did nothing of him, Brianna. I expected... This is the guy who brought us the Iraq War and the Patriot Act and NAFTA, and he's like the poster child of the conservative Democrat and the neoliberal. But then he gets in office and he does all these things which shock me. He massively reduced the drone war by over 90%. He, like I said, pulled out of Afghanistan. The Supreme Court overturned the EPA's ability to regulate greenhouse gas emissions, and the Democrats slipped into the IRA a provision that redefines carbon as a pollutant, which then allows the EPA to start protecting the environment again. If we didn't get that, and yes, that was brought to us by Democrats, we would be beyond fucked on the issue of climate change. We still are, but we'd be even more fucked if the EPA couldn't do basic EPA stuff. We have project labor agreements for hundreds of thousands of construction workers. That came to us from Biden. $15 minimum wage for federal contractors and employees. That's from Biden. Gun reform with red flag laws and closing the boyfriend loophole. Those are definitely good things. Ketanji Brown Jackson on the court. A George Floyd executive order to...
Sorry, I'm a little bit behind. Two-party system. Hey, thank you for the promotion. Here's the thing, though. Get banned. Fuck off. Third party is viable when you knock out the Republicans and petition the Dems to pass RCV or risk losing relevancy. Sorry, what's RCV? It's my bad. Ranked choice voting. Okay, my bad. I should have known that. God, dude, I fucking hate when people do promotions on my channel. I don't know why, even more than, like, people saying outright bigoted shit promotions. I'm just like, hey, you didn't fucking talk to me about this. I want you to fuck off entirely. Yeah, have petitions go with Democrats go with ranked choice voting, or they would lose relevancy. And as Alex pointed out last he checked, Green Party is shrinking while the DSA is growing. So at least there's one good thing.
Create a registry of abusive cops. We have the PACT Act, which is healthcare for veterans exposed to toxic burn pits, which every single Republican voted against. He added 800,000 manufacturing jobs. I didn't expect any of these things. So when I talk about Biden the way I do, is because none of these things were on the menu and we got them. So now when I look at the fact it's either going to be Trump or Biden, a standard generic Republican or standard generic Democrat, the way I feel now versus the way I felt in the past is like, oh, this is definitely way better. If you asked me in 2019 or 2020, I'd be like, I don't know, man, flip a coin. 52%, maybe a Democrat's a little bit better than a Republican. Now I'm looking at it like, it's not even close. One blows the other out of the water, and all I care about is the policy. And when we have...
Yeah, while we can acknowledge that Democrats and Republicans basically serve the purpose of the capitalists and preserving the capitalists, like, undoubtedly, without a doubt, Democrats are better than Republicans. Without a fucking doubt. Standard Republican versus standard Democrat's going to be way better. And then you have Joe Biden, who's doing above the bare minimum for everyone, or Trump, who set us back multiple years. Hopefully the decision's a little bit obvious.
Have all these policies. I mean, we have a 15% corporate minimum tax rate now. That is not something we had previously. You'd have corporations paying...
Oh, sorry. I just remembered this because we were talking about the student loan debt thing, where even though the forgiveness, the amount forgiven didn't go through, didn't they have the... someone please correct me if I'm wrong, but Biden made it so that banks can't put on additional interest per month and increase the amount on people's student loan debt. Is that correct? I feel like it is. And that's a pretty big fucking deal.
Nothing in taxes, or they'd even get a negative tax rate, which is a subsidy effectively from the taxpayers. These things are not nothing. We have a 1% tax on stock buybacks. They're cracking down on wealthy tax cheats. Like, all these things are very good. They're objectively good. So do you agree that Biden is better than what we expected on the left?
Maybe you've already set your expectations on the ground, and it seems like he's surpassed your expectations. He has not surpassed mine. I don't know what you want.
What were your expectations?
Me to say,
but he's not better than what you thought.
No,
that's honest
he's not
question.
better than what I.
You said you expected absolutely nothing, but you can also acknowledge that he did more, but he also didn't exceed your expectations. Come on, Brianna.
Thought he
really?
Let me no.
You expected to be better than I did, for sure.
I expected him to. Well, I didn't really expect him to fulfill his campaign promises.
You're contradicting yourself.
But I'm not going to pat him on the back when he so flagrantly lied about them. No.
But let me ask you a related,
okay, that part I can
question.
respect.
I mean, how do you assess
pat him on the back for that.
The difference
so
between
I have to give him credit where it is due.
Acknowledging that, I mean, I think you would acknowledge it's not Cornel West is not going to be president.
I'm going to be honest with you. If it's about convincing me how Brianna Joy Gray is going to vote, Brianna Joy Gray lives in D.C., is constructively disenfranchised, and Brianna Joy Gray also is sympathetic to accelerationist arguments. So I am not afraid of Trump, and I will never for the rest of my life, I don't care if I live in Pennsylvania, I don't care if I live in Georgia, vote out of fear. That's not who I am. That's not who I was raised. That's just me. And I recognize that I am radical. I recognize I'm not telling...
It doesn't matter whether or not you're afraid of Trump, bro. It's a matter about how people are going to be affected in the long term. You have a less likely chance of people being bit on the ass from voting for Joe Biden compared to people being bit on the ass for voting for Trump. This is such a silly argument. Like, I'm not afraid of Trump. That's fine. But people are afraid of their livelihoods, and you're not sympathetic to it. You're sympathetic to a fucking accelerationist arguments, and that's just ridiculous. They're not viable. You have to show me that accelerationist arguments can work. And so far they haven't. Like, it's fine that you want things to happen as fast as possible. But that also being said, when things don't happen fast enough for you, you can't say, well, either it does happen or it's not fucking happening. And that's exactly what you're doing. Like, oh, if I'm not getting a third party, well, then nothing's fucking happening. In fact, you're willing to go further back. This is ridiculous. She calls herself an accelerationist? Yeah. It's okay. I'm down the road for me in a nice place. The best way to survive a crash is to accelerate into it. Yeah. Shit, I'm accelerationist. I want this good thing to happen, but I mean, it's a really thin line. I don't think we can get past the ramp. If we can't get past the ramp, just fucking book it. I don't care if there's a brick wall there.
Telling anybody to be like me, but that's who I am.
So, but just to get back to the question, I mean, do you acknowledge that Biden is better than Trump? I genuinely want to know, like, how do you assess? Do you see they're like roughly the same?
I think it depends on what metric they're using. There are people who will take everything that you just said and say, if Biden
answer the question
in Ukraine the way he has been doing, missiles going off deeper, closer.
I know she's trying to
Russia,
pretend of nuance, but this is so insincere.
And the doomsday clock ticking down on World War III the way it has been done cancels out all of the meaningful gains that you just articulated so nicely. If it comes down to World War III versus that litany of achievements that you just articulated. There were people that, with the hindsight of living in the nuclear holocaust, would say, well, I guess that Trump actually was a better president.
But I don't
Who's more likely to get us World War?
Dog hype? Are you kidding me? I don't know if y'all just listened to that, but that was just ridiculous. Based, wholesome, Chungus Elon shit.
3, though. I definitely think it's Trump. I definitely think it's Trump more likely to get us World War III.
I don't want to know what people think.
You disagree?
I want to know what you think. Do you think that that's accurate? Because to me, I look at the record.
We don't know until history happens what history is going to do. I wouldn't have expected that under Biden we would have gotten in the middle of this war with Ukraine and Russia. I would not. That wasn't on my bingo card either.
Yeah, but we know that Trump was actually more hawkish towards Russia than
he built up on NATO's border.
Obama
he put
was.
troops on NATO's border.
We know what he did with Iran. We know he said he was going to get on Afghanistan.
Yeah, I don't understand this from Brianna Joy Gray. Trump made tensions worse internationally. Biden, while not perfect, has done less to raise tensions internationally, while also moderately helping out American people. Not far enough, that's fine, as opposed to where Trump ended up screwing a lot of people of lower classes, people who in worse economic circumstances, and Brianna Joy Gray is willing to be like, I mean, it just kind of cancels itself out. It's like, wow, Trump has all these red flags, and apparently you can put them on the same pedestal. This is so disingenuous.
Afghanistan. Biden actually did it. So we can evaluate these two claims. We shouldn't believe anything that Donald Trump says about Ukraine.
A toxic. This is literally just a vote blue no matter who a lesser of two evils conversation.
No, it's a let's discuss the facts and how you weigh them conversation.
How about this? Biden can be 10 times better than Trump. Let's concede that for the sake of
even if it's a blue no matter who argument, what's the problem with that? What's the problem with it if it's going to make things marginally better? Because it's going to do more than going third party or bust.
Argument. I'm not voting for it. And millions of...
Hey! Enough. Misa.
Other people feel the same way because it has absolutely nothing to do with that. I don't know how else to express this to you guys. Kyle, it's not that there is a disinterest or a failure to recognize what are meaningful changes, but there is a realization that acknowledging gains when the possibility of what someone could be doing to help the population that elected them, when there is a huge gap there, it can be papered up by championing someone's accomplishments. And people are reluctant to give credit precisely because they think it will end the conversation about how much further people should be pushed. So it feels akin to saying Jeff Bezos was walking down the street and he...
Okay, she's about to say something really stupid because she's talking about Jeff Bezos at the moment. I just feel like she's going to say something really dumb. But I'm very sympathetic to that argument and being like, yeah, people are going to just talk about all the good things that they did. But the problem that she's not understanding the nuance of is you can acknowledge that people are doing good things. You could say like, well, point being, like, you can acknowledge that someone has done something that's good, but it could be better. And that because we're getting somewhere now, we can make it better in the future. Like, we can accelerate. I just sounded accelerationist. God damn it. We can make this process easier for us. We can move forward with this process. It's not going to take us as long as it did before based off having this other guy who actually knocked this shit back, like making unions stronger. Although they're not as strong as they should be, I will acknowledge Joe Biden fucked up with the train workers union. At least there's something being pushed there and being like, all right, well, we can move forward and gradually make unions stronger. I think Brianna doesn't understand that. She's just like, either this or nothing.
Gave a $5 to a homeless.
And that's just a very flawed point of view.
Don't you want to pat him on the back? And it's like, well, yeah, on some level, I'm glad the homeless guy can give his sandwich. But you're.
I mean, if first off, I don't understand this argument that well. But also, if Jeff Bezos went on the street and gave someone $5 so that way they'd be able to eat, I'd be like, good job, man. Obviously, you could give way more and help people out in a different way and actually make things better. But I mean, it's $5 is better than nothing. This is stupid.
Your framing of the student debt issue.
You can still be critical while acknowledging people do good things.
Precisely what the problem is.
That's
constructive criticism,
Look,
crazy.
I am actually discussing the facts that I learned through reading 1,000 articles on the case. Now, if I bring up those facts and it triggers some idiots into hating me, so be it. They can hate me all they want. The facts still matter.
What are you talking about?
Okay, I didn't expect him to appeal the cases. He appealed the cases. I didn't expect him to do the Higher Education Act after the Supreme Court slapped it down. He did the Higher Education Act. I didn't expect him to do any of it, and he did it. And this is something that, if I said early on, Biden's going to do nothing on student loan debt, everybody on the left would have been like, you're right, he's going to do nothing. Now he does 5, 6 different things on it, and it's like people go, no, doesn't count. I'm not saying what he's doing is perfect. Obviously, the best thing to do is to wipe it all out through executive order, and he has the authority to do that. That'd be the best thing to do. He didn't do that, but can we at least acknowledge the facts of what went down? And I see this rugged insistence. Honestly, it's like Biden derangement syndrome among some people on the left, and it's like Democrat derangement syndrome among some people on the left. The fact that we can't all agree very quickly that, well, obviously Democrats are not 10 times better than Republicans. They're 100 times better than Republicans. And even if you are somebody who's a purist and you're on the left, you can acknowledge a W in the instances you get it while still pushing for more. I mean, a perfect example is what's happening in Minnesota right now. Minnesota has a 1-seat Democrat majority. We got universal free school meals, legal weed, carbon-free electricity by 2040, tax rebates for the working class up to $1,300 if you make under $150,000 a year, 12 weeks paid family leave, 12 weeks paid sick leave. They banned conversion therapy. They did red flag laws for guns. They did universal background checks for guns. They did automatic voter registration, public free college if you make under 80K, a ban on PFAs, which is the forever chemicals, $2.2 billion increase in K-12 school funding, sectoral bargaining for nursing home workers. These things are all...
This is a lot of gish galloping. This is a lot of gish galloping, but Kyle is not wrong here whatsoever, being able to say, like, yeah, we can acknowledge they do good things while still pushing for more and being like, hey, this is pretty good, but it's not good enough. We need more. Or else you're going to get out of office. We're going to replace you with someone else. Yeah. Kyle's absolutely right here.
Not little wins. They are huge wins. And I still see this insistence like we're back in 2016 or something where people are like...
They are rich, spoiled zombie fucks, for sure. It's just, if I had to choose between rich, spoiled zombie fucks, I would say that blue is a little bit better. And they can actually help people more than red, spoiled zombie fucks can. How much better? Not incredibly much better, but better than nothing, and be able to ask of more.
No, Democrats and Republicans are either equally bad or actually jujitsu move. Republicans are the lesser evil. And I think it's idiotic. It's doomerist. It's nihilist. It's people who are refusing to acknowledge reality, and they'd rather narrative hump all day talking about Democrats are so bad, Democrats are so bad, Democrats are so bad, but oh yeah, I'm a leftist.
Going back to the student debt point.
Not even gonna acknowledge anything that Kyle just talked about. All right, Brianna.
It is kind of telling to me, Kyle, that you so quickly, you injected your own low subjective, personal, and low expectations into the argument.
Okay, let's talk about our personal expectations. All right, even if they don't reach your personal expectations, if people are helped by it, can you acknowledge that these things helped? That by going this route, more people have effectively been more... Hey! That people are effectively going to be more helped compared to if they voted in the other guy? That people are going to be more helped compared to if you try to get more people to third parties? Which won't be able to do anything because they don't have any legitimate power until we get ranked choice voting? Like, even if... I keep repeating myself, but it doesn't have to be personal preference. If you can acknowledge good things happened, you should be able to acknowledge good things have objectively helped people. And Brianna's just like, well, I want to go with my personal preference. Well, your personal preference is flawed. You're not looking at it objectively. I'm not saying anyone looks at it objectively, but you're not willing to look outside your scope. That's stupid. Oh, thank you, Alex. I appreciate it. Hold on. All right.
To say, well, because Joe Biden did more than I subjectively believed was possible, I am going
it's not
to...
all subjective,
minimizing the accomplishments. I think that you might be minimizing his failures and the extent to which that he knowingly, it seems, lied about what he was willing to do and, in fact, dramatically underachieved his campaign promises. And for you, that might be a hop, skip, and a jump. Okay, but he did more than I expect. You're setting your...
About to pull a whataboutism here, but Trump mostly completely lied about what he was going to do during his campaign. Joe Biden has been more faithful to what he said during his campaign. I know this is a whataboutism, but it's just like, bro, not every person who campaigns is going to be able to achieve what they said they're going to be able to achieve. Like the student loan debt thing, at least Biden tried for it, and then it was rejected in courts. And now he's finding another route. Yes, he could do more. He could sign an executive order and just whisk it all away. Totally. But it's just like, you can't always expect someone to achieve their campaign goals when you have opposition going directly against you.
Expectations.
Bernie would have had to deal with the same thing.
Lower than the expectations that he set for the American public and the context.
And then you're going to be like, Bernie isn't doing enough.
And I completely respect and appreciate that doesn't bother you as much as it bothers me. I don't know if it's because I have experienced six-figure student debt. I don't know your life. I'm not trying to make any presumptions about it. I don't know if it's because I had a certain kind of life experiences or that other people who kind of share my view have these kind of life experiences. But for millions of us, 44 million in fact, that kind of bait and switch is unforgivable when you recognize,
I don't like when she says bait and
both
switch.
recognize that it was in his power to sign an executive order to deliver overwhelmingly for the people whose votes he needs right now. So the argument is not with me. The argument is with the millions of Americans who feel betrayed by Joe Biden and his campaign promises. If we have a contract agreement for you to fix the hole in my roof and I give you $100, and you come into my house and instead you restage my living room and it looks beautiful, that simply wasn't the agreement. And so I am fine. I'm happy to acknowledge the furniture placement is gorgeous.
Okay.
I love the floral arrangements, but that's not what we bargained for. And if your desire is to push the Democratic Party left, you have to...
Hold on, Bree. How much money did you put in? Are you a super PAC? Willing to give your money to the Democratic establishment?
Chris Hedges says this all the time. It's a politics of fear.
I'm just making up bullshit.
If you are more afraid of electing Trump than the Democratic Party is, you are never going to be able to exert any leverage on them at all.
That's
and I
not
understand
true.
That's a risky position.
That's not true.
I understand Trump getting reelected is scary. I understand that there are
and you're willing to risk it.
Ways in which he's hurt real people in real ways. I understand all of that. And we just have a difference of opinion about what the priorities are. You said in that viral clip, Krystal, if your priority...
Oh my God, she was so close and she just missed the mark. I acknowledge that he hurt a bunch of people. But we're just not on the same page. But you also can't acknowledge when people have benefited during this thing and when things could also improve. If you vote for a hillbilly, I will get you unlimited Modelo. Oops, Modelo only has enough for 1/8 of the population. My bad.
Priority is reelecting the Democratic Party, then X, Y, and Z. And I think that was good that you said that because you articulated what the priority is for you.
No, that is not the priority for me. The policy is the priority for me, Bree. And I think you know that. And I think it's disingenuous to say otherwise.
You could put policy forward that does the bare minimum and then make it better in the future. I don't know why Brianna won't acknowledge that. That's just so odd.
That's just a quote
let me just say, though, is it worth... I mean, I think you care a lot about the labor movement, right?
Sure.
So is it worth
not enough,
letting that baby be smothered in the crib in order to what? I mean, that's the piece that I don't understand. I understand all of your critique of Joe Biden. I think it's reasonable, okay?
Yeah, I do too.
I actually am not as strong as Kyle in terms of the intentions on
more
the student
of a Biden
loan
bro
debt,
than she
right?
is, for sure. And she gets accused of being a bigger one than me, but that's a side point.
I understand your critiques of Joe Biden very well. Many of them, if not all of them, I basically share.
Hey, no worries,
what
James.
I don't understand is just simply a tactical question of how focusing on a third-party effort gets us towards the goals that we share. That's the piece that, to me, Recent history proves it has the complete opposite effect, whereas we do see actual progress that is possible made through the Democratic primary process. And I know you accept that, like you're not a Marianne hater. I'm not putting that on you whatsoever.
Marianne.
But I don't understand how risking the reelection of Trump and allowing a Trump union-busting NLRB to quash what is the most hopeful thing happening in American politics, which is the labor movement. I don't understand how that moves us forward. Like, that just doesn't compute for me.
Well, for one, I'd say, and I don't mean to at all minimize the value of this latest ruling, but I have been heartened by the energy and the gains made by the labor movement prior to that. Over the last few years.
Which were enabled by the Biden NLRB. I mean, there were keys. The workers get all the, listen, they do the work. I'm not trying to take anything away from them. But there were key decisions that were made in the Starbucks organizing drive in particular, in the Amazon labor union drive as well, that enabled those workers to do their thing. That wouldn't have happened under Trump.
It feels as though, one, the question has been asked and answered several times. You don't agree with my priority. But
no, I still don't understand it. And I'm may just be dense, but explain again.
I agree with Kyle that ranked choice voting is a priority.
Yeah.
I believe that getting the Green Party more powerful, getting them federal matching funds, enables them to join in the Libertarian Party, which has been the most successful advocate for ranked choice voting in the country, to continue to further those efforts. My vote for Joe Biden does nothing to advance what I think will be the ultimate path toward left victory in the United States, which is getting rid of the corporate duopoly. I don't see voting for Joe Biden as advancing that core effort at all.
So ranked choice voting is kind of like, I'm just trying to understand, is like the end all be all. That's the number one priority. And so you would actually support the Libertarian Party, the American Constitution Party, the Forward Party, whatever, if it advanced that goal, and that's the priority over everything else. I'm just trying to understand.
Would I personally support an effort by any of those parties to advance ranked choice voting? Yeah, of course.
No, but would you support those parties? Like, because ranked choice voting is so important.
Why would I when I could vote for the Green Party that actually shares my ideals as well?
Well, I'm just trying to understand where your priorities lie. Is it like you're basically a single issue voter and it's ranked choice voting?
Well, it's not a single issue. It's breaking the corporate duopoly. That's it. This is the fundamental issue. I think that.
How do you do that, Bree?
For many people, they are very wary of validating what they see as a two-headed snake, and this comes back to your concern, Kyle, about people not willing to acknowledge these successes. I think that we all understand that there is a way that the two corporate parties play off of each other. Democrats get to keep lowering the bar because the Republicans are worse. They both play these culture war games back and forth with each other, where at the end of the day, we're told, well, you got to go vote for the Democrats because gay rights and trans rights and black rights and immigrant rights and all of these rights are on the line. And I said this in 2020 as well. It's not that those arguments aren't true. The question is, how do we ever disentangle ourselves from that? Because it's always going to be the case that some worser thing is coming down the pike, precisely because we've enabled that to be the case. And many people, and I don't feel quite this way, but many people feel as though there is an energy suck that happens with even paying attention and voting in these general elections. I think that your points about what's happened on the state level in Minnesota, et cetera, are much stronger. I know that, for example, Sabby Sabs is always making the case that, don't forgo electoral politics, focus more on what's happening on the local level. And I think that is a perfectly reasonable argument to make as well. But I do think that there is a failure to recognize the extent to which there is a validation that takes place of the status quo, that people are trying to negotiate as they reckon with real gains that the Biden administration has effectuated.
Yeah, so let me respond to that. I don't want to validate the status quo as much as I want to acknowledge the positive things that exist and have happened recently, which I think is some evidence that in some ways, limited, but
sometimes you have to make changes through the status quo, changing it so it's less of the status quo that you're used to it being.
In some ways, we are moving in a better direction. So let me share a point of agreement, because we've been arguing the whole time. It'd be nice to have a point of agreement real quick. If we wake up tomorrow and there's ranked choice voting everywhere, I would be the biggest Green Party simp on the planet. I would be insufferable. I would basically spend every day advocating for the Green Party. The reason I don't do that is because we don't have ranked choice voting, and I do feel like the choice is effectively just down to a Democrat or Republican in the general election, whoever they may be.
True.
Now, having said that, I don't want to validate the status quo. I just want to let everybody know in some ways we are moving in a good direction. You brought up the state parties there. There are 6 states now that did free school meals for kids. And in some of those states, that's even...
Okay, I'm going to speed this up a little bit.
Breakfast and lunch. And people are not going to be surprised to hear this. Those are Democratic states. And you have the Republican Study Committee, which is basically 3/4 of the House GOP. They're pushing to ban any and all states from doing free school meals for kids. They released this in their priority. So when I look at that, I feel like I try to hold the two thoughts in my mind at the same time. I want Cornel West to be president. But I also know that given how structurally deficient and biased the system is right now, it's not going to happen. So given that...
I think Cornel West should have ran
Let me ask you this, because I feel like there's a better way to put it. Forget about voting. Voting's irrelevant, right? Let's just say it's election night 2024. It is all of our worst nightmare, Biden versus Trump. Not voting, but that night when you know it's going to be Biden or Trump winning, are you sitting there like, yeah, of course I would prefer Biden win over Trump?
Honestly...
It's like 50-50?
I don't care.
Okay, all right.
That's
an
stupid.
answer.
It's not my party.
That's an answer.
That's
an answer.
radical. People are going to be very upset with me.
Why are you on party lines, bro? Most Democrats don't want to be on party lines. It's because they're not your party. Oh my God, this is so stupid.
I don't care. That's
there will be people who agree with you. I don't think you.
I know.
Yeah.
They're my audience, and I've come to this position after talking with. I gotta say, I loved Colin. I'm sad that they're shutting it down. But part of the reason I loved it is because I would talk to people who were calling me. I would hear their doors dinging in the background because they were doing food delivery, or they're EMTs, or they're like, and this gets characterized as a privileged position that you don't care who wins, Trump or Biden. My experience is the people who have been taking this position, this is just anecdotal, tend to be people at the lower end of the economic spectrum who do feel like their lives aren't meaningfully different under a Trump versus a Biden, and who would rather rock the boat and throw a monkey wrench in the machinery if there's even a fracture of a sliver of a chance
the thing is, you
that
probably
has
measure the
some
difference.
outcome other than what we've been experiencing for their entire lives.
Fair enough. You gave a direct answer, so I respect it.
The other thing I would say, that because you said you're basically an accelerationist,
But
like you think things need to get better in order for them to get worse.
I feel,
worse than
given my own class privilege, I am reluctant to personally put those wheels into motion, but I very much respect particularly people who, like I just was talking about, who do feel that way. I think that's a legitimate perspective. I feel like it's not my place to say, let's make the world burn, because I'm going to be okay in either way. But I am open to that perspective.
Colors your view and how you approach these things and why you wouldn't really care whether it's Biden or Trump.
Yeah. I remember the night of 2016. I don't know, how did you guys feel? I wasn't personally devastated.
So,
I felt
that's a
in
great
some
question.
weird way vindicated.
That's a very...
This is what we had been telling them was going to happen the whole time.
So I agree with you completely about 2016, right? And I voted for Jill Stein in 2016. 2020, I didn't vote for Biden. I didn't vote for anybody. It was sort of like, no, seriously.
I increased the speed, James. I'll slow it down a little bit.
I think they're roughly equal. I think Biden's around the edges better, but I thought he was going to be as conservative a president as he was a senator. So I was like, okay, whatever. But on the night of 2020, I was actually like, oh, for the love of God, I hope Trump loses. And, it's because I see everything he did. I mean, look, I can run through all the bad things Biden did.
It's also because 2016 was really unique in the circumstances that we were going against, where it wasn't so much of, like, I guess I won't say unique, but just being like a typical neoliberal versus a typical neoconservative. We had a typical neoliberal in 2016, but we didn't have the typical neoconservative, and we felt the consequences on it, and we've kind of learned from it. Like 2016 and 2020 were very different years. 2016, it was just like, oh yeah, maybe things should be fine, and shit happened. And then 2020, it's just like, yeah, we can't do this. We can't do what we did in 2016.
It's my standard rant that I've been doing for a long time now. But when you look at Trump, I don't want to sidetrack the conversation here, but like the 91 felonies that he's charged with for defrauding the United States with fake electors and effectively trying to steal the election. Like, to me, I kind of agree with the people who are like, on that alone,
yeah, that's fair.
This is fucking crazy. We've never been here before. We're talking about the peaceful transfer of power is genuinely in question now in a way that it never was before.
Let me say, in terms of my view on Trump, the reason why I'm not even a little bit sympathetic towards the accelerationist view is, first of all, I just think, like,
because it's ineffective.
Get worse. Sometimes they just get worse. And I think there's a real possibility that, we go in the...
When things get worse, it takes years, decades for them to get better. And the accelerationists are willing to be like, well, fuck, if it doesn't happen, fuck everybody. As opposed to slow, incremental, gradual change. Again, Joe Biden is nowhere near perfect. I don't like Joe Biden. But at least with doing some good things, we can push more forward.
Rather than a leftist utopia, we go in the direction of like a fascist police state. I think that's a real possibility on the table. And if things get worse, I think that's probably more likely than the outcome we would like to see. But specifically on Trump, in some ways, the worst part of the Trump era has been not that it has created a divisive politics, because I believe in a divisive politics. It's just about where the divides should be. And he has made politics all about just how do you feel about the person of Donald Trump. And I think that that has been a significant barrier in terms of making any of the arguments that we want to make for a different world and better policies, et cetera, because
I can kind of see this where Democrats use that for their marketing strategy of like, hey, do you want to deal with this? As opposed to, do you want to deal with this and make things worse? Because this is what David Dole pointed out when I watched his video yesterday, is that Democrats are just so bad at marketing themselves. They always do the, well, we're not as bad sort of thing, and everyone will be like, okay, so what are you going to do? Not be as bad? Oh. Okay. And it doesn't make it sound like any change is happening.
Yeah, you could say, oh, they'll just say Ron DeSantis or whoever is worse than Trump. But you got to acknowledge there is something a little special about the dude who's going to like do a January 6th and like, you know, have an insurrection, et cetera. He's a particularly potent villain that is weaponized very effectively. And so it creates a divisive politics that is divided along all the wrong lines. So that's why I'm not sympathetic to the view that like, oh, maybe if we elect Trump, somehow that'll make things better in an a process that's 3 years down the road or 3 decades down the road that no one can really explain. I'm not sympathetic to that because I've seen the way that Trump has made our politics worse in real time in a way that has not been beneficial.
Well, for one, I would say to the extent that we are inching closer to fascism as opposed to the socialist utopia, we got exactly here doing vote blue no matter who. So I don't think that any kind of concerted Green Party.
What was that answer? I know she's not done, but we got here because of blue no matter who. So we're not closer to fascism compared to how we were closer to fascism? What the fuck is this answer? 1 year, motherfuckers. Boy Meets Mini. Let's go. What's up, my friend? How you doing? Friends, if you're not already following Boy Meets Mini, be sure that you're doing so, where they do American and Southern politics, South Asia politics, excuse me, as well as our critical racing theorist and critical faith theorist. Also, how did your critical faith theory go? Sorry, I was probably asleep.
Campaign or effort, third
but
party.
That's not really
if we voted blue no matter who, Al Gore would have been president. We would have never had Bush, and Hillary would have beaten Trump. So vote blue no matter who would have been a whole bunch of standard milquetoast Democrats.
Now you're making the argument that it's third party spoilers' fault.
Oh, it burned out. Oh, that's totally fair. Yeah, because I know you've been busy with work and freaking tired, so not wanting to stream is totally understandable.
That Al Gore wasn't elected in 2000.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say.
Hold on, I want to go back to what Krystal asked, because this was such a stupid.
Worse to that because down the road things better. I'm not
anti-American or anti-America, neither one, but all of our systems are outdated and sometimes a joke. Yeah, that's pretty much how I am. 3 12-hour days last week, dude. I'm sorry. Ugh.
Sympathetic to the view that like, oh, maybe if we elect Trump, somehow that'll make things better in an a process that's 3 years down the road or 3 decades down the road that no one can really explain. I'm not sympathetic to that because I've seen the way that Trump has made our politics worse in real time in a way that has not been beneficial.
True.
Well, for one, I would say to the extent that we are inching closer to fascism as opposed to the socialist utopia, we got exactly here doing vote blue no matter who. So I don't think that any kind of
blue no matter who wasn't a big thing until 2020, when people were more saying no blue no matter who. Maybe 2016, but when a utopia, what the fuck? I mean, even then, it's just like we were closer to a fascist state during Trump times compared to now with Joe Biden. And she's like, oh, we got here because of blue no matter who. So what's the problem exactly? If we're able to implement change gradually to have this quote-unquote socialist utopia, what's the problem? She's complaining because things aren't happening fast enough, which we all acknowledge. Things aren't happening fast enough. But unfortunately, change is going to be gradual. It's going to be painstakingly slow. As someone who claims to be a socialist, which I don't know. As someone who claims to be a socialist, like, I forgot what I was saying, but just can't expect things to happen automatically. It has to be slow. And as a socialist, she has to be able to change the Democratic Party from the inside because we have a two-party duopoly. Gradualism is for losers.
Concerted Green Party campaign or effort, third
but
party.
That's not really
if we
true,
voted blue
though.
no matter who, Al Gore would have been president. We would have never had Bush, and Hillary would have beaten Trump. So vote blue no matter who would have been a whole bunch of standard milquetoast Democrats.
Now you're making the argument that it's third party spoilers' fault that Al Gore wasn't elected in 2000.
No.
No one ever said that. What? Al Gore won the popular vote in 2000. He lost within the Electoral College. What are you talking about? What?
I didn't say that. I'm saying you accused the vote blue no matter who argument. I'm saying if people had quote unquote voted blue no matter who, Democrats would have won every election. That's the point I'm making.
Well,
vote blue no matter who
right.
means everybody votes
so
Democrat.
for one, more registered Democrats in Florida voted for George Bush.
I know, I agree.
You're streaming and you're not real socialist. Shake my head. You don't want the they-them Liberation Army to take over with their AKs.
Than they did Al Gore. Al Gore failed to win his own state.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I agree with you on
So
that.
I'm struggling with the argument here. What does George? But then there's
No, you just said we got
The argument is if we had blue no matter who all the time.
And the point I was making is in a real quote unquote
we would have just
vote blue
had
no matter
Democrats
who,
all the time.
there would have been no Republicans elected if everybody votes Democrat. That's the point I'm making.
Vote blue no matter who doesn't mean everyone votes Democrat. Vote blue no matter who means the Democratic Party.
Yeah, Florida was a really contentious state that had to go through the courts. I know there was a lot more to that, but yeah, he might have won. I know Florida was the contentious state back in 2000. I'll have to look more into that.
Uses coercion and guilt to get people to vote for it instead of delivering.
But I know that was a
on
whole
what
bunch of legal
polls
barriers.
demonstrate overwhelming majorities of Americans want, which is left policies. That's what the pernicious nature of vote blue no matter who is, that it absolves the Democratic Party of having to look at polls that say 2/3 of Americans don't want Joe Biden to run because he's too old, that 88% of Democratic voters want Medicare for all, that 60% of Floridians, a state that went for Trump, wanted a $15 minimum wage. But Joe Biden, whose praises we've been singing a lot today, purposefully stripped on order of the parliamentarian from must-pass COVID legislation so that that one core promise that he made to Bernie, as Bernie dropped out after like 3 days of not being, endorsed after 3 days after dropping out, was immediately thrown under the bus.
But let me just to interject real quick.
And Brianna, people fucking hate Joe Biden for that. He's the guy who said, I beat the socialist guy, when it took a whole bunch of Democrats coalescing in order to take down Bernie Sanders, who had the largest grassroots movement in American history. Yeah, we don't like Joe Biden for that.
Because I don't want you to get the misimpression that I'm not aware of the negative things around Joe Biden. He also said he was going to get back in the Iran agreement, did not get back in the Iran agreement. We're still terribly cucked to Saudi Arabia as a country as they do a genocide, where he's still sanctioning Afghanistan. He's super conservative on the border, almost to the point of being as extreme as Trump. He did the Willow Project. He didn't give us a public option. He didn't give us $15 minimum wage. He didn't get the original Build Back Better through. He screwed the rail workers union, which is something you very potently covered. So I'm not here to pretend like Joe Biden only did good things. I'm trying to do, to the best of my ability, explain what I think are the facts on both sides of the equation. Here are the good things he did, here are the bad things he did, and then people could just make up their own mind as to how they want to proceed in a showdown between Trump or Biden, who they would prefer.
Do you think that Biden is better than Obama?
He is.
I'm open to that argument.
I would say so.
Again, my fundamental,
But
I don't, what
Obama did some
purpose
good
does that
things
serve
too.
for me?
I think it's everything, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's the is the person going to do good things that move us in a better direction? Especially, I brought up labor unions a million times, but for me, that's really central. Or are they not? And
Obama
I guess my
had his
question for
voice.
you is,
Everyone liked him
because you were sort of like,
thought,
all right, let's acknowledge.
they were talking to
sure,
Obama.
let's say Biden's 10 times better than
He was
Trump.
the everyman.
Like, how much better
That's why they
would
like
he
him.
have to be
Doesn't call people
before you're
Jack.
like, okay,
That's
it's not just lesser evil. It's not just vote blue no matter who. It's actually worth voting for this person.
He would have had to have done everything that he could have done.
Even Bernie wouldn't have done everything he could have done, in my opinion.
Even in comparison,
what kind of statement is that?
I just think.
Wait a minute. I'm not saying he.
What do you mean? What kind of statement is that? You think Bernie would have been able to pass everything? Like, never mind. People also need to recognize the buck doesn't stop with the president, especially Brianna. She thinks politics is all about the figurehead. Yeah, exactly. It's not. Like, that was the whole thing about the blue no matter who thing. As much as I don't like blue no matter who either, within our country, it's the only thing that's viable, considering that, Trump appointed 3 Supreme Court justices, and now it's way more right-wing, when it's supposed to objectively not be about party bias. It just happens to be that way when they overturn Roe versus Wade. But, it affects the judicial branch, but also, it all comes down to the Senate and Congress. She thinks, Joe Biden didn't pass this. At least... It's not good enough. I agree. Joe Biden didn't do enough for student loan debt. However, he was in the process of something and people blocked it. But again, we're going to establish, sign the fucking executive order, Biden. If I talked to Brianna about South Asia, she wouldn't know a fucking thing. True. I'm learning slowly. I'm not Brianna, but that's the thing, is I'm learning slowly. Despite being a full-time political commentary and me being a mid-tech bro. A certain person was on fire in trial. At the same time, I wouldn't buy pepperoni rolls to benefit his court costs.
I'm not taking a shot at you. I'm just saying I don't think politics, even somebody like Bernie who's principled, I don't think he even delivers on everything.
He has to fulfill miracles. I'm not saying he has to accomplish everything that he says he wants to do.
But you're an accelerationist.
I'm
you're an
saying he
admitted
has to have done
accelerationist.
everything he could have done.
You can do a lot as president. You can do a lot.
So this is the issue with Biden. Not that he didn't wave a wand and create Medicare for all, because we can all acknowledge that even if it were Bernie Sanders, that would have been an uphill battle.
Okay.
But what I choose to focus on my show, and what I really appreciate about reporting by people like David Sirota and The Lever, is that he exposes the gap between what these people have done and what was literally possible, either because of the nature of executive orders, whether it's walking us through the parliamentarian brouhaha and the $15 minimum wage, because so much of neoliberal democratic politics is obscuring that they really could have done things to make lives better for all of us behind the veneer of insidery Hill jargon, or the idea that the Republicans are the big baddies that couldn't allow us anything to pass. And I believe that my job is to cut through those narratives, to expose to the public that the Democratic Party is making choices. They're not just
he could have done Medicare
in the football.
I'll go even further than you. I agree.
They're making choices? Yeah, I think it's important to be able to expose that. What about those choices?
He could have done Medicare for all with the stroke of a pen, and it was David Dayen over at the American Prospect who laid this out, who said basically, look, under a national emergency, you have the authority under Obamacare to basically do single-payer health care, and they did it, I think, in Libby, Montana, because there was some issue there with health. So he had the ability to do it. So I agree with you. He could have done that. He didn't do that. The only point I was trying to make is that even with somebody like Bernie, I think there would be a little bit of a gap between what he says when he's on the podium and if he were to actually be president. I think a guy like Bernie would deliver on way more of the stuff that he says, because I think he's more honest among government officials. But, certainly
would have
Biden,
a ton of
there's
hurdles.
definitely going to be a gap there between what he says and what he would do. But to be fair, like I said before, I do think Biden kind of ran as he wasn't as conservative as like Mike Bloomberg in the 2020 race, but he was pretty conservative. He was running as a pretty conservative Democrat, in my opinion.
It's so hard
he
for
was,
a
but he
Medicare
still
for all
said we're
executive
going to get a
order.
$15
True,
minimum
but at least
wage.
people would have been.
We're going to cancel.
I'm not arguing with you. I don't know.
Would have been helped.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with you, Bree.
Kyle, if you say that he ran as a conservative, what it sounds like you're doing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a furtherance of you saying the bar was on the back. He fulfilled my expectations.
To me, it was, yeah.
But what I'm telling
he surpassed my expectations.
But he fulfilled, surpassed, whatever. What I'm saying to you is that you have constructed a bar that's lower than Biden constructed for himself.
No, but I don't agree with that.
That's not true. As the kids say, that is cap. Just like that, too. Hello, my fellow cool kids.
Going based off of his commentary at the time.
He literally said and ran on
Nothing will fundamentally change.
Nothing will fundamentally change. It's true. Come on. I understand what you're saying. There are some examples to the opposite. I agree with you.
Did he not run on a $15 minimum wage? Yes or no?
He definitely did.
Did he run on canceling all student debt? Yes or no?
We're not making
that
the
I'm not sure about.
I was going to say, I'm not sure about that.
10,000.
But hold on.
What's up, James?
Sorry, $10,000 for all people under 100.
Yeah, I thought it was that.
Yeah, she's seething, and Kyle was like, oh, no, I agree with these things. It's just this, and this. She's just like, that's not good enough. You said he was more conservative, but not like mine Bloomberg.
With you,
I'm not
that
trying to argue with you right now.
Couldn't have done more, or that he fulfilled every promise or whatever.
Okay,
but what I want to get from you though is in terms of how you see your role as independent media.
Yeah.
And you said you see it as exposing the gap between like the Democratic Party neoliberal rhetoric and what they actually deliver.
What they could deliver.
And I do plenty of that as well.
He's done a lot. Is it good enough? No, but I mean, it's more better than nothing.
Points, etc. But when does it become not just you're exposing the gap?
James, I'll do that after. This is a YouTube segment, so I'm not going to do it right now. But I'll do it after I'm done with this.
But you're actually presenting a dishonest impression of the Biden administration if the positive things that do happen don't get any acknowledgement or coverage.
For one, I think that there is a multi-billion-dollar liberal media sphere whose job it is.
And who your audience doesn't trust.
They don't talk about these things. They don't talk about these things.
Your audience doesn't trust,
That is not my fault. I have a bunch of poor people giving me $5 a month to give them something that they can't get with their cable subscription. I'm sorry, it is not my job. People are not paying me the bulk of their minimum wage salary to have me tell them what a great job Biden did somewhere.
But listen, I'm not attacking.
What a disingenuous fucking argument. The whole point is that you can talk about the good, you could talk about the bad, you could talk about the good and say that it's not good enough. So I guess, yeah, in some sense, fucking people are paying you for it. Yeah, way to make it all about yourself. People aren't paying me to tell me the good things, all that they want to do is hear the bad. So are you admitting that you're a fucking shill? That you're a fucking LARPer? Man, Brianna Joy Gray could have been so good. And then she just went on this downhill thing with Force the Vote. And then she tried to call out Noam Chomsky, which I know Noam Chomsky is a little bit controversial right now, but it's, oh, God, ugh.
Yeah, I just genuinely want to understand your view. So you
also,
feel
the media
like
doesn't talk about the good things I mentioned Biden do. Like, nobody talks about those.
You feel like...
Nobody brings those up.
Is this representative of your view? The media doesn't talk about these failings of Democrats. And so they can get the good stuff about Democrats somewhere else. I'm going to just focus on the negative things, the places where they fall short.
Yeah.
I mean, so you would acknowledge that if people are just consuming, for example, your podcast, that they're not getting the complete picture of what's going on.
I think that anybody consuming any one news source, particularly an independent journalist who puts out 1 hour episodes twice a week.
Oh, but you do write things too. You do plenty of content.
Well, sure. I mean, they're certainly not getting full news if they're watching Rising. But the content, the
Oh, that's right. Okay. I was like, was that a dig at Krystal Ball? But she's not part of The Hill Rising anymore.
I'm responsible for in terms of picking topics. No, like the episode I'm going to record later today is about AI. It's a niche subject. It's not a news show. So I don't quite understand what the takeaway is from that. Of course, I'm offering what my goal is to offer to fill in the holes in what I perceive to be in the media at large.
So I understand that because that used to be much closer to my perspective. Mm-hmm. And I have shifted my thinking because I feel like when I only covered basically like Democratic Party sucks, this is their failures, et cetera, it began to create a misleading impression that the Republicans are better, that the Democrats never do anything good. And so it has caused me to reevaluate some of the coverage decisions that I would have made in the past. So this is not to you can cover whatever the hell you want to cover.
Because
I just wanted to understand the lens you were bringing to it, because I think that makes a difference in terms of like what stories you would include and the things that you would focus on.
Well, I think that might be.
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, a lot of people on the left wing area were part of the left bad area. Kyle was part of that. Wow, why am I blanking on other examples? I mean, a lot of people were. I was on that too. Or not the left bad, Democrats bad. Did I say left bad? Whatever, fuck it. Democrats bad. I was part of that too. While also acknowledging Republicans were bad, but I really focused on the Democrats, which could have looked bad. But, yeah, it seems like Krystal and Kyle did a lot of self-reflection, which is really nice. They're still not where I would like them to be, but again, I have a soft spot for Kyle. He's the one who put me on my path to the left, and Krystal Ball's usually pretty cool. She does have some bad takes, and I don't really care for her show with Sagar because she ends up agreeing with things that she shouldn't agree with, but whatever.
It's true if you also aren't covering that Republicans are bad, which I do as well. When it's
That's fair.
relevant, and especially when it's coverage
relevant.
of
Wait,
why
what?
Republicans are bad that are different than what the mainstream media is doing. So, for example, I just had an exchange on my last episode about this because my guests seem to be largely unaware of the legitimacy of the claims in the Georgia indictment against Trump. And there is a section of the left which takes the position that, well, Trump isn't the real problem and the media is unfair to Trump and Trump derangement syndrome is what it is with Rachel Maddow and that. So I'm just not going to listen to any of those kind of arguments. I just don't care.
Right.
And I don't care about it as much as many, many other things. And I think it takes up too much energy. But I also need people to understand that it wasn't just a 1-6 thing. It was this conspiracy to overturn the election that people should take seriously. And we cover those things as they come up. The trucker, whatever it is that comes up. We did a whole Tucker Carlson series last summer. Like,
Obama's gay. Did you know that? I'm just kidding.
Oh, yeah, the Tucker Carlson reference. Yeah. I guess, what did we learn from this? That you should really think about your politics and really
All of your projects
reflect on how things are going to be able to actually make a significant change within the United States and help the rest of the American people. To go, Arnan Erotugo. Sorry, I pronounced that, but thank you for the follow. Friends, if you enjoyed this segment, please feel free to give this video a like and subscribe if you want to see more content. Any support is very much approved. Play it.